Hey, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Data Analysis with John. Today we're going to do something visual. We're going to be working with a bar graph, but we want to do a disaggregated bar chart. So this is something you'll want to use when you want to compare more than one thing at once, like maybe the change in something over time or the change in one variable, across a different variable. It's always a good idea to kind of know where you're headed. You'll see, like here in my screen, I've got a dashboard I've been working on for this project. And at the end of the day yesterday, I just typed out a few things I thought I needed to do the next day. And it's always good to kind of try to verbalize what you're going to try to do before you do it. So here I said I want to have % of people who have heard of SATO. Now, what is the SATO? It's this nice little toilet pan that goes onto a pit latrine and helps to keep odors from getting out and flies from getting in. It's got a little trap door. It's being promoted by UNICEF and Lixil through a public-private partnership. Lixil is this big manufacturer of toilet products around the world. So we're working with them in several countries, but we have this household survey in Kenya where the product is being promoted, and we want to know how many people have heard of it as a result of this campaign. So we have a random household survey. I won't get into the details of that, but here's my survey form. It's the name of it. And so what I want to do is think about, what kind of graph I might want to have. Almost always the right answer is a bar chart. You'll hear that from me a lot, but you may from time to time find something more useful, like a line chart or even the dreaded pie chart. But a bar chart is great because we can have multiple bars that show one thing, and we can split them by color, which is what we're going to do here today. We want to know how many people have heard of this product, but the survey's been in 2 different rounds. So we had a round 1 in December. We had a round 2 in March, and in addition to knowing how many people have heard of the product, we'd like to know, has it changed at all over the that time period? So first thing we'll do, again, remember I'm already inside a console in mWater. You can do this in a console. You can do this in a dashboard. If you are in a console, you want to add a dashboard tab that allows you to add widgets. So we're going to drag in a chart widget here. I'm going to put it right next to this because I kind of like having a half-size widget. It seems to be easier to work with sometimes. You can always put a spacer over there too if you want to have half and half of the screen. So when you put in a new chart, it's blank. So until we click on it, nothing happens. When we click on it, we get to choose the type first. So that's why it's always good to think a little bit before you go into building your visualization about what type of chart might work well. You can still change it later in some cases, but it's good to have a kind of a picture in your mind going in. So we're going to choose bar chart, and it's asking me to pick a data source. I've got 2 surveys I've already added to this dashboard. That's why they're both here. So I don't have to go find them in this case. They're here already. So I'll just click on the household survey. And there's a few options here that you can usually leave at the defaults. The first one says you've got site questions. Do you want to show every single response of the survey? Or do you only want to show the latest response for a particular site? That would be if you were doing a monitoring survey. In this case, we're going to disaggregate, by rounds, and we're not using sites to track those households, so we're going to leave that alone. And then, of course, we only want to include final responses. It's usually a good idea because that means you've cleaned your data and it's ready to be viewed by the viewers if you have an approval chain set up. So the first question we have to answer is the horizontal axis. That's where you see the select button here. It means we need to select something. The horizontal axis in this case is going along here. That's going to be the categories that I want my bars to be. So what I'm going to do here in this case is pick, remember I wanted to compare the percentage of people that had heard of this product between round 1 and round 2. So a good thing to pick from my bars would be the round of the survey. Just so happens I have that set up kind of nicely here in a survey calculation. We can do another video someday about this. We also have a help item on this. But what I did was I set up a little calculation in my survey for the survey round where I just, based on the deployments, I assigned it either round 1 or round 2. Those are the only rounds we've had. So this is just a number that represents the round. So I'll grab that. Okay, so now you can see it's pulled in the survey. It's made some assumptions here. So look at the vertical axis. That's the height of the bar, right? The height of the bar has automatically been assigned to the number of household surveys. In this case, we did 858 surveys in round 1, same number in round 2, same sampling strategy, but different villages. Now you'll see that mWater has binned this number into bins. That's because we're dealing with a number here that I just assigned 1 or 2, but it could have been anything in between. So mWater doesn't know that that was meant to be round 1 or round 2. It just knows it's a number. One little trick we can do here, we could set up only 2 bins and turn off all the other ones. You can switch these on and off just like that. It's real nice. What I'm going to actually do instead is click on this, remove it for a moment, add it again, and use this formula here. So remember, formulas are the next tab over from your fields in your data source. And we have a formula called convert to text. What that's going to do is we need to tell it convert what to text, right? So click on select. So now I'm going to get that same variable that was Kenya survey round. It's going to just take that number and turn it into a text version of that number, right? So it no longer thinks there's numbers in between 1 and 2. It just says, okay, there's a 1, there's a 2, that's what I'm going to grab. And that's really handy. And now I can also, a really nice thing about this we just added recently is I can rename these. So if I just click on that 1, I can change it to round 1. It's a little easier to interpret for the person looking at the graph. Round 2. Okay, great. So now I've got my bars, round 1, round 2. What I want to do is separate these into colors based on whether people have heard about the product in each round. The way you do that is this split axis feature here. You don't have to have a split, it's an option. So if you click on this, you're saying I want to split that axis. And now I'm going to go in and find that question, which is only asked of households that don't already have the product, a little wrinkle there, right? So if I say, have you heard, the question is, have you heard anything about the product? Here we go. Okay, so immediately this has been split into different colored bars, which is really handy. In this case, because all of these add up to 100% of the total, it might be nice to stack them, and that's an option up here at the top. If you click on stacked, there we go. Now we've got them stacked up. Now look at the axis over here. We're still in number of survey responses. It's probably fine here because I've got the same number in each round, but you might not in your survey. And also it's a little bit harder for somebody to just interpret, to look at these numbers and say 119 versus 141. Percentages are much easier to understand. So if you click on this other option called proportional, there we go. So now everything adds up to 100%. It basically takes everything in that bar and divides it by the total of the number in that bar. So now I can say, okay, 16% said yes in round 1 and only 13% said no and said yes in round 2. The margin of error of this survey is about 10%, so we don't really know if that's a significant change or not, but it certainly isn't a big increase. So that's an interesting finding there. You'll also notice that there's this none category that comes in. Why is that? Well, because some of the people did not get asked have they heard of the product because they already had the product. I could put a filter down here on my chart that says filter out everybody that hasn't heard of the product. But an easier thing to do is to just uncheck that box for none. All the percentages now readjust. And I don't really have to do anything else. So that's great. Sometimes the default colors are a little bit awkward. Yes is kind of a good thing and no is a bad thing, I guess, or maybe know is a good thing because that's people that might want to buy the product. So I like to make the colors for something like this, different shades of one particular color scheme. So you could pick one of our default color schemes here. Some of them are kind of nice. Some of them are, don't work so well. But I usually am kind of a control freak with colors, so I usually want to pick my own. You can just click on each one of those boxes and pick a color. We'll make this one kind of a bluish one. We'll make this a lighter blue. And the people that aren't sure or don't know, well, I usually make that kind of like a gray color because they're not so relevant. You can decide what you like the best. Okay, so now I've got this round 1, round 2, which is what I wanted. I should now move on to labeling my chart. We should always add labels to our charts. We never know who's going to get the chart without the explanation from us. So for survey questions like this, I'll usually just give the question or some version of it as the title. I'll say, have you heard about the Sato toilet product? And if you want a little space there, you can press enter. This text can be, you can change the color, change the bold level. Want to make it a nice blue or something, we can do that. Lots of adjustments that are possible here. I'm just going to leave it black for now. And now I've got this axis over here that's unlabeled. Now maybe some people will know it's 100%, it's a percentage because it goes 0 to 100, but let's make that explicit. So we go over here to the labels tab, click on vertical axis labels show, and we'll just put something like percentage of households who do not have Sato products. It's good to always throw in a little bit of explanation there so somebody knows, we excluded that percentage of people that already had the product. It's good to kind of remind people of that. There's also a way down here in the notes area of the chart to add notes. It can be, another way to make sure people know if you've done some kind of manipulation to the data. So even down here, we could go and say households who already have the product were excluded. Nice thing to do just to make your charts a little bit easier for somebody to interpret. And then finally, we don't have to, in this case, add a horizontal label because the labels on the bars are obvious already, round 1 or round 2. You could add something that was like survey round or something like that, but I think that's a little bit of overkill in this case. So we have our chart. Everything looks good. We can X this box now. By the way, if you exit at any time, it saves your changes. It doesn't cancel it. Everything is live in here. So, as new data comes in, if you click refresh, that'll update. And there we have it. And if you wanted to download that data, you can just click on this little control here, export the data, and you get a nice CSV file. So if you wanted to export this to some other program that you use to make charts like Excel or Tableau or something, you can do that. And this is a really great way to prepare your data. Even if you aren't going to use this chart, you could throw it away, but you could use it as a way to prepare your data to be disaggregated for use somewhere else as well. So there's our first chart. Today we're going to do one other chart. We'd like to know how people heard about the product. So if they did hear about it, how did they hear about it? That's the question. So let's drag. First, again, let's think about the type of chart. In this case, we probably want a bar chart that has all. And the question that we asked it, had some categories that were multi-check questions. So you could say you heard about it from more than one source if you wanted to. So it's a multi-check question. That means we're going to have a bunch of bars that have varying heights in response to that question, right? So we'll try a bar chart first, and that'll probably work. Now I'm going to put this on top of this little text box here to maintain my columns that I've already got set up here. That little text just moved down. Now that I've done that, I could move it back up here where, you know, it divides these two guys here. It's just a way to kind of keep control over your divisions. And let's click on this and choose a bar. Again, we're going to choose the household survey as the data source, leave all the defaults. And now this time for the horizontal axis, we're going to pick, how did you first hear about the product? Okay, so it's given me a chart with every answer to a question that was given. If somebody did not give one of the answers, you wouldn't see the bar here. And again, we can relabel these, do all the things we want to do. But right away you can see, okay, we've got a problem. This is dominated by none. The reason is because if somebody didn't say they had heard of the product, they wouldn't have answered this question. The answer to this question would be blank, which is what goes into the none category. So again, we'll do the same trick as before, just turn that off. That effectively filters out everybody that didn't give any answer to this question. Sometimes you want to be a little careful of that. You might filter out, you know, people that didn't answer the question because they didn't know. So pay attention to how your questions are worded. Make sure there was a don't know option or something like that. Okay, now these labels can get kind of messy down here, the way that they kind of bunch up. So in these situations, I like to turn the chart on its side. Makes it a little bit easier to read. The way you do that is just click on the word horizontal here. So now that makes the bars horizontal instead of vertical. These labels are a little bit easier to read, and it just, to me, looks a little bit nicer. Okay, so we've got our chart. I don't know if it really matters, you know, whether they answered this question in the first round or the second round. You know, it's hard to say. But if we're really interested in it, we can find out and check that by doing, again, another split here. So here I'm going to split these bars by kind of doing this the other way around this time. We're going to split them by the round of the survey. So remember, I don't want to just grab that calculation variable. I want to put the convert to text in first. And now we'll pick Kenya survey round. And there we go. Okay, so let's go up here and we could look at, well, proportional wouldn't really do much here. It might, I mean, it gives you the percentage of people that said any answer at all to this question. So just be careful of knowing what that means in this case. So like 23% here versus 76% means of the people that gave an answer to this question, that's the percentage that said that answer. So that's, you know, that could be kind of useful. Kind of evens out the differences in numbers of people between rounds that answered the question. This color scheme is kind of atrocious right now, so let's pick a different one. You know, it's not much better. I notice the defaults don't look so great in oh, there we go. Okay, when there's only two types. Okay, so again, let's put a title up here. How did you first hear about the Sato product? A little space there. And let's label that bottom axis very carefully. Make sure that we say this is the percentage of people who answered the question. Or maybe not people, households, right? It was household survey. Okay. Percentage of households who answered the question. Oh, we forgot to fix our round 1 and 2s here. Let's do that real quick. They're down here under split. And we'll change 1 to round 1, like so, and 2 to round 2. All right. So, it's hard to say, there's a big change, that's significant here from one to the other. But you could see, like, here, most people heard about it through an NGO or a brochure in round one, but no one said that in round two. More people had a visit from a sales agent. There's a higher other, and in the next analysis, I should look at all those others and what they said and see if we can further classify those. So there are some interesting differences here. It may mean that in the initial days, people were more likely to be hearing it from a sanitation promotion organization like an NGO or their health worker. Versus later on, the sales agents have really taken off and are doing more of the work. Only time will tell if that pattern holds. But it's interesting. It's always good to check. Let's turn off proportional real quickly and see if that still kind of makes sense. When you're looking at the raw numbers, you can see whether that sample is really significant or not. Normally something over 30 responses is the minimum to make any kind of statistical analysis of, sample wise. So you can see here we've definitely got more than 30, but some of these smaller ones are really small. So not that many people had heard about it from NGO in the first round, and then even fewer in the second round. So I wouldn't overinterpret that. When you look at it proportionally, it looks like a really big difference. But when you look at it in absolute terms, you can see that it's not nearly as important as maybe the change from, the health worker to from round one to round two, and maybe the visit from a sales agent from up here. So in this case, I'm actually going to switch to the number instead of the percentage, because I think it tells a more honest and interpretable story. So we'll make that number of households who answered the question. This is why your axes are really important. Someone could get confused and think that this is percentage when it's not. So it's really important to label your axes. It's one of the commandments of data visualization. Okay, so let's close this. Great, now we've got this nice side-by-side view. If you were going to use this, increasingly these days I use these charts directly in my reports. We've gotten a little bit better over time about making charts look nice. What you could do is literally just go and do the screen capture with your computer here. Often I do that, it downloads it. Or you can export this whole thing as a PDF and just grab that part of the PDF. There's also a way to export individual charts as a picture. I find that a little bit less useful than just capturing it the way it looks here, because then, if you wanted to, you can make this smaller or bigger, depending on the size of your document and where you're fitting it into and stuff. So if you resize things here, the text, kind of resizes with it and everything. So it tries to keep proportional. So that's going to be it for today. And thanks for joining. And as always, email us at info@mWater.co or find us on Twitter or Facebook if you have any questions. And have a great day.